Now, before we start with directly with the questions of 530, I want to revise a little bit on the 530 with you. Little bit. This is such a fresh book. Like I have recently made this book, so I don't even remember the pages where I have 530. Just give me a moment. Okay. Now, when you come to SA 530 audit sampling, I am just going through the topics that from what topics you can expect in question, right? So there is a topic of sampling as an audit procedure. Then there is a meaning of sampling. Under the meaning of sampling, they also discuss objective of auditor, scope of audit. Then you have a topic of population. And under the topic of population, you will talk about the three characteristics of the population, that is appropriateness, completeness, and reliability. Then what is sampling unit you will need to understand. So population is one, sampling unit may be different. So what is sampling unit? And your sample must be representative of a population. Somewhere you may also see the question related to this. Then for sampling as a procedure, what approaches you may have? So you may do the non-statistical sampling or you can do the statistical sampling. Both are the approaches of sampling, right? What are the types of sampling? Statistical sampling, non-statistical sampling. Statistical is a more scientific one. Non-statistical means like worse than haphazard. Then sampling versus traditional method of accounting. Now this is a very basic question. That earlier how you guys used to do the audit, the auditors used to do audit, and after sampling came, why sampling came or what change it made in the life of an auditor. So it's a very simple question, the sampling versus the traditional method of auditing. Then there is a question on how do you ensure the appropriateness of sampling process, right? So you will say for ensuring that the sampling process appropriate, we'll go by the statistical sampling, right? So what are the advantages of statistical sampling? This is a good question for you. Then under the now comes the big question, big topic of your SA 530, that is the entire sampling process. So under that entire sampling process, there are 7 things that you do. First, you design the sample, then you collect the sample out of it, then you collect the sample size. Once you have the samples, once you decided the sample size, then you select the sample. Then on that samples you will apply the audit procedure. Once you apply the audit procedure, you will identify the deviation, for which you have to understand the nature of deviation and what was the root cause of that deviation. Once you have the deviation in front of you, you will project that deviation to identify the overall impact of it. That is called as projecting the misstatement, and along with that you will evaluate the result on the audit. Are we clear with the 7 method of the sampling process, 7 steps that you are going to follow? Then under which you will study the sampling size, sample design. How do you design as an auditor? There can be a question to this. What is sample size? Then example of factors influencing the sample size for test of control, and example of factors influencing the sample size for test of detail. Separate question, 4, 5, 6 marks, any marks question can come from this. Then when you're selecting the items for the testing, there are certain sample selection methods. How many sample selection methods are given? First, you have a simple random selection, just under which you have stratified sampling, and then you have interval sampling. Under the random selection method, you have simple random selection, and then you have the stratified sampling. Okay. Then you have a systematic or interval sampling, that is second method. Then you have a monetary unit method, then you have a haphazard selection method, and then you have a block selection method. Now you have selected a sample. What will you do? You will perform the audit procedure on that selected sample. There can be a question on that. Then you will have to, once you find out, okay, you perform the audit procedure, now you will find the deviation. Once you find the deviation, you will find the nature and cause of that deviation. Another good 5 marks question can come from this topic. Then once you have the misstatements or the deviation identified, you try to project that misstatement on the 100% of the population. It's a good question. Then you will evaluate the results of your audit sample. At least now you are familiar with the topics. All right. Okay, just give me a moment. All right. Under audit sampling, there is a question number 37. An auditor, while conducting an audit of an entity, has selected sample based upon his personal experience and knowledge. Later on, it turns out that the sample selected were not representative of the population. It has led to a faulty selection of samples. The auditor contends that the samples were selected based on his personal experience and knowledge. Can auditor escape from this responsibility? The answer is no. We studied that the sample needs to be representative of its population. You cannot just pick up, like, I will only do the audit of April month sales. I will only do the audit of October, November, and December month sales. No, you cannot just pick like this. Whatever sample you choose, it needs to be the representation of the entire population. So from every month of sales, you will need to select certain samples, right? So as per as a 530, you will answer. In the provided situation, the auditor has selected sample based on his personal experience and knowledge. It is a case of non-statistical sampling approach adopted by the auditor. Whatever may be the approach, non-statistical or statistical sampling, the sample must be representative, which means that it must be closely similar to the whole population, although not necessarily exactly the same. Hence, the auditor cannot escape his responsibility. This is your, I say, book question only, right? Test your understanding. Now comes what is the meaning of sampling, and also discuss the method of sampling, explain in the light of audit sampling. The big question, because you will have to explain all of it, all 5 of it, right? Sometimes this generic question doesn't come, but if it comes, at least we should be able to know how to write the answers, right? Will you write with me on this one? The question number 38. I will only write on the top of it because I don't have I can't rub this portion on from the board. Okay, what is audit sampling? As per SA 530, audit sampling refers to application of audit procedures to less than 100% of the items. Please underline less than 100% of the items within a population. Audit sampling refers to application of audit procedure. What audit procedure? Risk assessment procedure, further audit procedure, test of control, test of details, and all. Where in an item which is less than the 100% of an item. Why? The objective of the auditor when using audit sampling is to provide a reasonable basis for the auditor to draw conclusion about the population from which sample is selected. Did you get what happened with you over here? So when you say that I will select the sample which will be the less than 100% of the population, I still want to draw the conclusion on the 100% of the population, and that is the reason my sample needs to be the representative of the entire population. Correct? Because you can't say that if I select only 30% of the sales, I am going to give my opinion only on this 30% of the sales. No, 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 no. You will still issue your audit opinion on the 100% of the sales item. Yes? Then the 5 methods of collecting the sample. First one is random selection. Under random selection, you have both simple and stratified. Now, it is based on random number table. Both random selection is actually based on a random number table. This method ensures that all items within a population stand a equal chance of being selected using the random number table. Then comes the more interesting method, that is interval sampling. And during my audit life, like I'm talking about 2013 to 2016, when I was doing my articleship, I have used this method the most. That is interval sampling for whenever I would take the sample for sales and purchase transaction. Interval sampling. So how do you calculate so for interval sampling, you need to calculate an interval first. How do you calculate the interval? So, for example, if the total items in population of sales is 10,000, right? And sample size that I have decided that I will check only 500 items. So, I will divide 10,000 by 500 to determine what? My interval. What is 10,000 divided by 500? 20. So what I'll do here is, now I know my interval is 20. So first item I will select randomly. But after that, every 20th number transaction will form part of my sample until I reach the total sample of 500. Are you clear? This is how you do the interval sampling. Now please write this down. The number of units in bracket transactions in the population is divided by the sample size to calculate the interval. The number of units in the population is divided by the sample size to calculate the interval. Starting point may be determined haphazardly, but rest of the sample is selected by using the interval calculated above. Done with the random selection and interval sampling? Yeah. Yes. Then comes the monetary unit. It is a type of value weighted selection in which the sample size selection and evaluation results in monetary amount. Example, all invoices having value of rupees 1 lakh is selected as sample. That is monetary unit. Done with the monetary unit, guys? Then comes the haphazard selection. Now tell me whether the haphazard selection is going to be any scientific way of doing the audit. No, absolutely not. Because the samples are selected without following a structured technique, right? So under haphazard selection, please write samples are selected without following a structured technique. It is not appropriate when using statistical sampling. The auditor would nonetheless avoid any conclusion bias. So we know that in haphazard selection, there is no statistical sampling that is happening, right? Still, you will need to try and avoid any conclusion bias if you can when you are deriving the sample. The last one is block selection. What does block selection do? For example, in India, there is a period starting from September till December, till mid of January, it is a festival season, right? So for any retail business, it is going to be a high sales period, September to January. So you decided that because it is a high sales period, I will only select the I will only select the sample of September to January. I will not check rest of the month. That is called as block selection. It involves selection of blocks of contiguous item from within the population, right? Now, how many steps were there in a sampling process? Total of 7, right? You have a question? With reference to standards on auditing 530, state the requirements relating to audit sampling, sample design, sample size, and selecting of items for testing. What is sample design? The requirement of sample design: when designing an audit sample, the auditor shall consider the purpose of the audit procedures and characteristics of the population. When designing an audit sample, the auditor shall consider the purpose of audit procedure and characteristics of the population. Done, Priya? Now comes the sample size. I told you, right, out of that 10,000 transaction, I wanted to check only 500 transactions. So 500 was my sample size. So the auditor shall determine sample size which is sufficient to reduce the sampling risk to an acceptably low level. Now, you tell me what is the meaning of sampling risk? Priya, what is the meaning of sampling risk?
The risk that the sample may not represent the whole population.
But how does it become an auditor risk? The risk that the conclusion drawn from the sample may be different if 100% of the population is tested. Right? That is in the simple words, but that is exactly what it means. Like you, whatever conclusion you have drawn after testing the sample may not be the same if you apply the same audit procedure to the 100% of the transaction. And that is why you need to make sure that you have a sufficient sample size and you are not just testing like 10 transaction, 20 transaction out of 1000 transaction. And the last is selection of items for testing. While you are doing that, the auditor shall select items for the sample in such a way that each sampling unit in the population has a equal chance of selection. Amrita, are you here? You're here only, no? You're writing. Are you feeling cold in the library? Same used to happen in my library. I don't know why they need so much of a cold blast during a start. I used to feel sleepy only because of the AC in the library.
Yeah, same here, ma'am.
Same thing will happen with in your office also. Done? Out of all the methods, in what sequence did you have the stratified sampling? This was the third one, kya, in the sampling? No, under first one, under the random selection only, you have stratified sampling, right? Sometimes they ask you this question, write a short note on a stratified sampling. So what do you mean by stratification? Guys? Dividing the entire population into stratas, which are known as, sorry, dividing the entire population into subgroups, separate groups, which is known as a strata. Like for example, I don't want to do the audit, like I don't want to select random samples from with 10,000 invoices, sales invoices. I want to divide that 10,000 invoices based on the number of invoices raised in the north region, number of invoices raised for the south region, east region, west, and my exports. So for that, you remember the topic of disaggregation you studied in 520. It is the same concept that you divide your entire population into subgroups, and then from each group you select sample by applying the simple random selection or the interval sampling on the monetary unit. That way, whatever sample you will select, it will be more representative of the population, because each of the strata will get the equal chance of being selected. Yes. So it's a good concept. They may ask in the exam just to write 2 marks or 3 marks notes on that. So you'll write, as per essay 530, audit sampling, this method of sampling involves dividing whole population in few separate groups called as strata and taking sample from each of them. Each stratum is treated as if it was a separate population. Number of groups is determined based on auditor's judgment. Like, for example, if I want to divide into north, east, south, west, and export, that is my judgment, or however you want to determine. If you want to just have two groups, that is export sale and domestic sales, you can do that way as well, right? And then I have given an example, that is trade receivables that trade receivables that have 1,000 customers having outstanding balance of 20 CR. I can have first strata where I divide total 1,000 customers trade receivable based on sales region in India or outside India, such as north, south, east, west, and export. Or the second strata, I can divide the total receivable into outstanding balance less than 1 lakh, 1 lakh to 5 lakh, 5 lakh to 10 lakh, 10 lakh to 20 lakh, more than 20 lakh. And then I can select 25% of the items from north, 25% from south, 25% of east, west, and 50% for export. Similarly, I can do it in my second strata as well. Can you please write it along with the example? You guys usually write very fast, yeah, like me. See, in my Hindi class, like they will take like after every question, they will take 2 to 3 minutes. Ma'am, please wait. Ma'am, please wait. Like the whole class, it was like that only. So if you guys write super fast like me, like nothing like it, you will actually finish your exam much before, at least 20 minutes earlier than every other student. Now, remember you had a question of advantages of doing the statistical sampling, right? So this is another good question from the exam point of view. Audit testing done through statistical sampling is more scientific than the testing based on auditor's own judgment, because it involves use of mathematical laws of probability in determining the appropriate sample size in varying circumstances. Explain and also state the advantages of statistical sampling. So first, we should be known how to at least explain statistical sampling in 3 to 4 lines, right? Will you write, please? As per essay 530, we are defining the statistical sampling. As per essay 530, statistical sampling has reasonably wide application. How? Because here population is tested, which consists of large number of transactions, such as sales, comma, purchase, comma, trade receivable, comma, salary expenses. Therefore, audit testing done through statistical sampling is more scientific than testing based on entirely on the auditor's own judgment, because it involves mathematical law of
Ma'am, what is that after trade receivables?
probability. Salary expenses. Therefore, the audit testing done through statistical sampling is more scientific than testing based on entirely on the auditor's own judgment. Advantages of statistical sampling. Sample size does not increase in the same proportion to increase in the size of a population. This approach is more objective and thereby more defensible. Defensible in when it will be defensible? Like for example, if client says and tell you that you didn't do the audit properly, or if there is any inspection, EQCR reviewer comes and says, no, you didn't do the audit properly. Then you are like, you can tell Baba, I only applied statistical sampling. I did not use my judgment or anything, right? It is not professionally, it is not biased sample. Then it may provide better description of large mass of data than a complete examination, right? And it is widely accepted way of sampling because it is more scientific. A good question from your for the exam point of view, right?
Ma'am, you're on mute.
Sorry. CAB is appointed as an auditor of Messrs Divine Pharmacy, a wholesale medicine supplier. While auditing for the financial year 24-25, CAB wants to use test checking technique. Advise CAB what kind of precautions should be taken by him in this regard. Very old question. July 21, 4 marks. Precaution to be taken while applying the test check techniques. Nowhere in your essay 530 you will find this answer. Through thorough study of the accounting system should be done before adopting a sampling. Proper study of internal, like totally the based on whatever knowledge you have about the audit, you should be applying that before you write the answer how to test check, how to do the test check. Like test check means the sample you select and you do the testing on that. Then areas which are not suitable for sampling should be carefully considered. Example, compliance with the statutory provision, compliance with a transaction of unusual nature. You can't check it based on the sample, right? You have to check it all the transactions over there. Then for proper planning of sampling, methods to be used and explaining it to staff. So basically, you need to do a proper proper planning for the sampling, and also you need to explain the staff, your team. Then transactions and balance needs to be properly classified. How will you do that? Through the stratas. Then you have to select the sample through the sample size should be appropriately determined. Then sample should be chosen in an unbiased way, and errors located in the sample should be analyzed properly.
This is with both respective to statistical and non-statistical.
Yes. Now, you're writing this. Please come. Now, there is a question. What explain the factors to be considered while determining the extent of checking on a sampling plan? The factors to be considered for deciding upon the extent of checking on a sampling plan. Extent of checking, how much can you check? Like, how do you decide like how much extent of checking that you want to do on a sample? It depends on the size of the organization that you are auditing, the state of internal control in that organization, the adequacy and reliability of books and records, the tolerable error range. Can you tell me what is tolerable error range, guys?
The more that the organization is able to tolerate the deviations.
Tolerable error range. This will be from the entity point of view, or this will be from your point of view, auditor point of view?
Auditor.
Auditor point of view, yes. Then the degree of desired confidence. For whom? Degree of desired confidence. This is from whose aspect we are saying? From the auditor only. So both the tolerable error range and the degree of desired confidence that you want to bring of the users of financial statement on your audit opinion. Based on that, you decide the extent of checking on the samples. Do you have this, guys? Topic?
That's fine.
I want to do this one specific question. Okay. Under non-statistical sampling, you remember you studied one word that the non-statistical sampling is based on the personal experience and knowledge of that auditor, right? So non-statistical sampling, even though this is not scientific, but we still used to use, as an auditor, we still used to use non-statistical sampling for a very long period. And we are saying that even though it is not scientific, but it is still based on our experience and knowledge that we have obtained in the previous audit. Right? So what is non-statistical sampling? It is the sampling approach that does not have characteristics of random selection and use of probability theory. And in this method, the sample size and its composition are determined on the basis of personal experience and the knowledge of the auditor. This method, because of its simplicity was in operation in for many years. This method, because of its simplicity in operation, was in common application for many years. So just to explain the non-statistical sampling, we'll have to remember just 2 to 3 lines. That's it. Can I go to the next question? HYX HYX is engaged in trading of electronic goods having huge accounts receivable for analyzing the whole accounts receivable. Auditor wants to use sampling technique in considering the characteristic of the population from which the sample will be drawn. The auditor determines the stratification or value weighted sampling technique is appropriate. SA 530 provides guidance to the auditors on the use of stratification and the value weighted technique. Advise the auditor in accordance with 530. How do you do the stratification and value weighted? Guys, please learn this one, because what happens, no, generally we have the feeling about, okay, what we know from the strata, but when it comes to getting 4 marks from that stratification, it becomes hard, because then we write the same sentences in the active and passive voice. So that should not happen. At least that care you should take from now only, that under the value weighted method and stratification, you have two different concepts to be written, right? Anyway, let's go ahead and do this question. First, you will write the beginning of the answer as per as say 530, and then you can give a little bit of context, the objective of the auditor and all of that, right? But what is a stratification? It may be defined as the process of dividing a population into sub-population, each of which is a group of sampling units which have similar characteristics, often monetary value. Each subgroups are called strata. This allows a greater audit effort to be directed to the large value items, as they may contain the greatest potential misstatement in terms of overstatement. Now, how do you conclude on the overall population? In order to draw an opinion on overall population, the auditor needs to combine the result of all stratum to check possible deviation or risk of material misstatement. Then what is value weighted selection? When performing test of details, it may be efficient to Identify the sampling unit as the individual monetary units that make up the population. One benefit of this approach to defining the sampling unit is that audit effort is directed to the large value items because they have greater chance of selection and can result in smaller sample sizes. Done, guys, the value weighted selection. Now, tomorrow, do one thing, at least have a good look on essay 520 because we did a lot of question of 520. Do a little bit of revision of 530 if you can, so that when we come back, we can tackle the questions directly from 530. So we will start with 530 first, right? And then in the process, whenever we finish 530, then we will jump to the next question. So every day we target to do at least 3 standard, but it is not possible. Only honestly, like writing takes time. It happened in my previous batches as well. Even though I used to be very ambitious that we will be able to do at least 3, but like you know what happens in my regular session, that morning Hindi English batch only that I take, in there I don't do any writing practice. I'm only recalling and I'm giving them the chance to recall, and then only in 3 hours I complete 3 standards. So I know it is not possible that we can't rush through, like, you know, when we are writing the answer. So we'll do in the good speed, but can you at least promise me that you will revise 520 and 530 so that we are able to tackle the questions directly? So we'll first finish 530 tomorrow, and then 580 is there, and also 610 is also there, right? We have to complete that, complete those questions. Cool. Then see you guys tomorrow, same time, right? I'll try to finish my lunch early so that I can come early a little bit, like today.
Thank you.
Welcome. And just know that whenever my Hindi English batch finishes, I am going to increase the timing of your batch as well, right? One of my batch, the moment it finishes, either my CA final batch or my morning inter batch Hindi English batch, I will increase your timing so that we are able to tackle more questions in a day. Till that happens, can you please focus on your FM assignment costing well? So that whenever I need more time from you for audit, at least you should be able to give it to me. So rather than doing it for 2 hours, we can increase the writing practice for 4 hours, like that. Works? So please focus. So it will take, probably I will take one more week so to go on like this. But the moment then I'm done with either one of those batches, I will increase your timing from 2 hours to 4 hours so that we can do it more efficiently. All right. Chalo. See you guys
Thank you.
tomorrow. Welcome. Bye. Take care, guys.